Hello, dear students. Welcome to this lecture on Dr. Shashi Tharoor's essay about the multiplicity of India. Now, for a very long time, I wanted to deal with this essay. However, I was unable to because of several issues that kept on popping up. So, the essay that is in our syllabus is The Idea of India, India's Mosaic of Multiplicities by Dr. Shashi Tharoor. Now, Dr. Tharoor's essay primarily deals with a few major questions, a few fundamental questions, questions that we rarely ask. We often talk about Indianness, we often talk about India, but if we ask this fundamental question, that is, who is, for that matter, a quintessential Indian? That is, whenever I say the word Indian, which caste, sect, or for that matter, other issues pop up to mind? So this is a major question that Dr. Tharoor is asking, and this is a major question that Dr. Tharoor is trying to answer or address at least. So without further ado, let us go into the essay because Dr. Tharoor is a very well-known person and he rarely needs an introduction. So let us go into this essay, The Idea of India, India's Mosaic of Multiplicities. Now, let's begin. When India celebrated the 49th anniversary of its independence from British rule in 1996, its then Prime Minister H.D. Devegowda stood at the ramparts of Delhi's 16th century Red Fort and delivered the traditional Independence Day address of the nation, to the nation in Hindi, India's quote unquote national language. Now, Tharoor's first sentence is replete with several misconceptions and ideas which have prevailed throughout India as a nation. He's talking about 1996. He's isolating one single incident among the plethora of incidents that have made India what it is today. So he is referring to H.D. Devegowda's speech in Hindi, which is supposedly the national language. Okay. Now, eight other prime ministers had done exactly the same thing 48 times before him. But what was unusual this time was that Devegowda, a southerner from the state of Karnataka, spoke to the country in a language of which he did not know a word. Tradition and politics required a speech in Hindi, so he gave one. The words having been written out for him in his native Kannada script, in which they, of course, made no sense. What is Dr. Tharoor trying to point out over here? Look, he is isolating this incident because this is a very important incident and this is a very common incident that we as Indians can witness. It so happens that whenever a prime minister is addressing the country, he or she does so in the Hindi language. There is a misconception that Hindi is India's national language. However, the Constitution of India begs to differ. Hindi is one of the official languages as per the Constitution, but not the national language. India per se does not have a national language. But why was it so necessary for H.D. Devegowda to address the country in Hindi? Because, as Dr. Tharoor points out, that tradition and politics required that a speech be given in Hindi. Why? In order to pander to the North Indian audience, to the major Hindi speaking belt who reside in India, and because for the past 48 years, Hindi had been the traditional medium of addressing the country. Now, if you look at Indira Gandhi, she could fluently speak in French. I have heard her interviews in French. She could fluently speak in English. She could fluently speak in Hindi. If somebody tomorrow becomes a prime minister from West Bengal, he or she might be able to fluently speak in Bengali. If somebody comes from the the state of Odisha, they might be able to speak in Odia fluently. But if, imagine, as a Bengali, I do not have an iota of knowledge regarding how to speak Hindi. For example, my parents, they cannot speak Hindi very properly. So they often speak in Hindi, but that's a very Benglified Hindi, so as to say, like most Bengali people do. And that has become a cultural stereotype in Bollywood even. Is "ए तुम क्या करता" and all of that nonsense. However, what happens is when Devegowda, a southerner who was reading from a Kannada script, the Hindi tongue, what happened was that the language was not making any sense. Why? Because the Kannada tongue, every tongue has its own inflections, every tongue has its own pauses, every tongue has its own prosody, so as to say, rhyme and rhythm. However, if you take one language and you put it to the other, what happens is that it stops making sense. And if you take the North Indian languages and the South Indian languages, you'll see that there is a different sort of inflection, a different sort of throw, so as to say. Uh, so yes, we often try to copy the South Indian tongue uh, after watching presently mostly because after watching all the South Indian super hit films, we have also developed a sort of taste, an acquired taste for South Indian languages, just like we have acquired a taste for South Indian coffee right now. But the fact remains that we cannot quite emulate the language with the fluency overnight, right? And the same problem was taking place in the case of H.D. Devegowda, who was finding it increasingly difficult to address a nation in a language of which he did not know a word, in a language in which he was alien, so as to say. And he was using this alien tongue to convey his ideas and his ideologies to a nation. Why? Simply because tradition and politics required so. Now, Tharoor, by referring to this incident, is suggesting that such an episode is almost inconceivable elsewhere, but it represents the best of the oddities that help make India India. Only in India could there be a country ruled by a man who does not understand its quote unquote national language. Only in India, for that matter, is there a national language, quote unquote, which half the population does not understand. And only in India could this particular solution have been found to enable the Prime Minister to address his people. Now, Dr. Tharoor himself obviously knows several languages. He is a polyglot, so as to say. To put it mildly, he is a polyglot. However, the problem remains that uh, not most people are. Say, a person in his 70s or in his 80s in a village in Uttar Pradesh who has say very little literacy to no literacy at all, cannot quite understand what is happening in a South Indian movie like, say, Pushpa. Similarly, a person, say, an aged lady in a village of, say, in a village near, say, uh, Coimbatore, would not understand references given in Hindi to, say, a specific local issue, because these are all culture specific. And as you understand very well that India is a cultural conglomerate, that is, there is a unity among diversity, but the diversity is so very diverse that you cannot quite bring it under one single umbrella and create a homogeneous culture out of it. But it is in India that this impact of homogeneity, that this necessity for homogeneity has been felt. And this homogeneity is not achieved but is forced at the expense of all the other languages by giving a predominance and a preference to Hindi, which half of the India, the southern part of India, does not speak. Say people of Bengali origin, they do not speak Hindi, that's not their mother tongue. People of Assamese origin, they do not speak Hindi, that's not their mother tongue. People of, say, Maharashtra, they do not speak Hindi, that's not their mother tongue, they speak in Marathi. So, why is there this necessity of pandering to one linguistic group? That is the question that Dr. Tharoor is posing. I know it's a very difficult question, and this question might infuriate many of the audiences over here, but this is a question. This remains a question nonetheless. And only in India can this happen. And then Dr. Tharoor continues with his argument by saying one of Indian cinema's finest playback singers, the Keralite KJ Yesudas, sang his way to the top of the Hindi music charts with lyrics in that language written in the Malayalam script for him. But to see the same practice elevated to the prime ministerial address on Independence Day was a startling affirmation of Indian pluralism. If you have not heard KJ Yesudas, please listen to one of his songs, which became very, very popular. It is originally a song by Ustad Bade Ghulam Ali Khan Sahab, Kakaru Sajni Ayna Balam. It's a beautiful song sung by KJ Yesudas. Now, Yesudas, when he used to sing, even perhaps Mr. Balasubramaniam, SP Balasubramaniam, when they sing, they write the original script in their mother tongue. Like in the case of KJ Yesudas, it was written in Malayalam script. But he was singing in Hindi, and he became quite popular in Bollywood, quite like SP Balasubramaniam became very popular. KS Chitra became very popular. Kavita Krishnamurti, who knows several languages, became very popular, and she is still very, very popular. So, all these people, they have kept on this practice. Like I heard from somewhere that Muhammad Rafi, he used to, since he had not studied much, so he used to write the original in Urdu script, and then he would sing in Hindi. So the same thing went for Ustad Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan Sahab, who would write in Urdu script and then sing in Hindi or Punjabi. So this thing is a very common practice in Bollywood, in the musical world. However, to elevate it to the seriousness of a prime ministerial candidate or a prime minister himself addressing his own country on the event of Independence Day is unthinkable. And it talks about the uh, veracity of the Indian demand to speak in a certain language to address the diverse people of the country. Now you see, had there been a national language, this is an old debate which has been going on since the time of the conception of the constitution. However, had there been one nation, one language, it would not have been so very difficult. But there is no one nation, one language theory in this country, at least, because the constitution has acknowledged about 22 or 24, I'm forgetting, maybe 22 languages as the official languages, and Bangla is one of them, and many other languages are. So, if all of these languages are considered to be official languages, then the problem becomes very severe that there is not one language for one nation. Now, with the regional changes, with the geographical changes, the uh, variables become way absurd. Like the Gujarati culture, the Bengali culture, and say the Malayali culture are very, very different. Like I'm in the habit of listening to South Indian songs and watching South Indian movies also. So a few years ago, maybe 1 or 2 years ago, I came across a song called Enjai Enjami. And this song was so very beautiful because it was speaking about our cultural heritage. Now, whenever I listen to this song, I open the subtitles and try to enjoy this song. Now, I know I'm missing something which is lost in translation, but it's still better than not understanding the song at all. A few years ago, song became very popular, Mani Ke Mage Hite, and so you see these trends keep on coming. These trends keep on coming and going, and with the advent of the social media and with this real culture and everything, it is becoming more of a conglomerate of languages, and therefore the national language or the necessity for one nation, one language is slowly receding. But for official purposes, yes, obviously we need one universal official language, which is English, which remains there. Then Hindi comes in very close second, and the local areas need their local official languages. So that's the practice. But to ascertain a certain language, the status of a national language, and make a prime minister speak in that language while it is not his mother tongue and he has no clue about that language. Like if somebody asks me to speak in Malayali today or to speak in Telugu or Kannada, I will not be able to speak, I will not be able to even understand. Why? Because I do not know that language. I have no clue about that language. Like our one of our former presidents, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, when he used to sometimes recite poems in his own mother tongue, he used to give translations, and it was an absolutely new world for us. Say when people like uh, when people like Mamang Dai, people like Robin Nangom, they write about their own cultural identity. It opens up a new doorway for us to understand the Northeast. Similarly, say when South Indian writers, when they talk about their own experiences, the way they look at the world, that becomes very interesting to us. Like you are Anantamurti, R.K. Narayan, and the way that they say, take for example, the way that R.K. Narayan talks about Malgudi, it's very different from what we have seen, what we have been through. But it is a place which is akin to our heart, which is close to our heart. So these are all diverse experiences, but this diversity exists because of the diversity of languages, areas, and geographical locations. You cannot just simply make it one single identity. It's not so easy. Now look what does Dr. Tharoor say. For the simple fact is that we are all minorities in India. Now, it is a very difficult thing to say. You'll say that, sir, I heard that Hindus were a majority, Muslims were in minority, Christians were in minority, blah, 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 blah. But look at what Dr. Tharoor says. He's talking about a different kind of minority, in a minority in a very different sense. So look, he says, there has never been an archetypal Indian to stand alongside the archetypal Englishman or Frenchman. So just like there is an Englishman, you can say that, okay, this guy represents the uh, British culture, so as to say. You cannot say the same about a French person. All right. And then look, he says, a typical Indian stepping off the train, let us say a Hindi speaking Hindu male from Uttar Pradesh, may cherish the illusion that he represents the majority community, an expression much favored by the less industrious of our journalists. But he does not. So, Dr. Tharoor says that let us assume for a moment that there is a majority. Who is this majority? This majority consists of a Hindi speaking Hindu male from Uttar Pradesh. All of India is not Uttar Pradesh, right? Uttar Pradesh forms a fraction of entire India. So, all of India is not Uttar Pradesh. So, the entire population of India cannot be solely consisting of the population of Uttar Pradesh, number one. Number two, if he is a male, there are females in Uttar Pradesh as well. Let's imagine the ratio is 6 is to 4 or say 7 is to 3. Even then, there are women. So even then, their numbers are receding. Thirdly, when I say Hindu, Muslims, Christians, and other sects also exist in Uttar Pradesh. And therefore, what happens is that he is not the one and only person over there. So, he is not the majority community. He is not the majority community of India, so as to say. Maybe in Uttar Pradesh he is, but in India he is not. So please do not fall prey to the traps of the present day yellow journalism, which would propagate to show that Hindu male from Uttar Pradesh is the quintessential Indian. Why? Dr. Tharoor has his own logic. Let's try to unravel this mystery. So he says, as a Hindu, sure enough, he belongs to the faith adhered to by 82% of the population. So 82% people of Uttar Pradesh are perhaps Hindus. But a majority of the country does not speak Hindi. So maybe half of the people, or 40%, 45% of the people, I do not know the exact number right now. I really do not have the demographic with me, but let's assume, say 50%, 60% people, say 50% people speak Hindi. So that's not the majority. What about the rest of the 50%? A majority does not hail from Uttar Pradesh, though you could be forgiven for thinking otherwise when you go there. So he has his own sarcastic tones. So look, the majority of India does not hail from Uttar Pradesh. You and I do not hail from Uttar Pradesh, perhaps. I do not. I do not know about you, but I do not. And if we were visiting, say, my home state of Kerala, he would be surprised to realize a majority there is not even male. So if you go to Dr. Tharoor's homeland, which is Kerala, you'll see that the majority of the people there are not even male. One second. One second. So, worse, this archetypal Hindu male has only to mingle with the polyglot, multicolored crowds, and I'm referring not to the colors of their clothes, but to the colors of their skins, thronging any of India's major railway stations to realize how much of a minority he really is. Now, look, if you go to India from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, you will see so many variegated colors, and not just in culture, not just in the clothes that we drape, but in the uh, skin tones as well. So, just go from Kashmir to Kanyakumari via train, and you will see that there is such a plethora of skin tones, skin colors. So, uh, you will realize that how much of a minority you are. Every 10 kilometers, the same language keeps on changing. So, even his Hinduism is no guarantee of his majorityhood. How? Because his caste automatically puts him in a minority. Now, look, this is a very interesting idea. If you are a Hindu, you are pertaining to a certain caste. If you are a Brahmin, 90% of your fellow Indians are non Brahmins. If you are a Yadav or another quote unquote backward class, say be it OBC, be it SC, be it ST, whatever you look at, 85% of his fellow Indians are not, and so on and so forth. So, this is a very intricate, very complex idea that is being propagated over here. The question of nationhood and the other ideas I'll talk about in a separate video. So, this was the first idea that I wanted to hammer home so that we could have a discourse in the first place. So, here I'll end this lecture, and in the next lecture, let's hope to meet you all. So, see you. Have a good day. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, please put it in the chat box. I'll be very happy to answer. All right.